This is the weekly Grifball Hubcast, only on GrifballHub.com.
Alright everyone, hello and welcome to the Grifball Hubcast. This is episode 308. As you can see, we are not Kal and Goose because Kal and Goose have had a baby. So you get us instead. Quite a downgrade, I know.
Yeah.
I'm here with Ouglaf.
Hey.
How are you doing today?
I'm alright. Just a little different because I'm used to watching it instead of being in it, so
Yeah.
this is different. But
Yeah, it's a little different.
we do have things to tell you, so we thought
hope.
we'd lighten you up about it.
Yeah, and I was not expecting to be as tired for this as I was, but Mango and Chauncey and the rest of them ended up getting me to stay in Rocket League until like 4 a.m., so that was interesting. So yeah, I might be a little out of it here, but that's fine. So one of the things I want to talk about is yesterday, on the broadcast and production side, we held our second iteration of Warzone Weekends. That was me, DJ, and Receptor who ran that, and that's just sort of been this community show we've been working with so our fans can kind of come in and play and get to play with us. We do a lot of Warzone Firefight. I know we had a big enough party at one point to actually go into proper Warzone. So that's been a lot of fun. I think that's been received well. And we want to keep expanding production at this point too. And Oogie, I know you've been doing a lot of casting lately. You've kind of been one of our number 2 commentators.
Practicing with DJ and making sure that we get the games trained properly and that teams show up and all sorts of stuff. And we're coming up with new ideas about new shows or perhaps getting other people to get involved in their shows so we have more to add to the channel. So we're pretty excited about our plans for the future. Yeah,
it's one of the big things. There's a reason why we kind of brought in so many interns on the broadcast and production side was for this to be able so we can have people who are producing highlight videos and whatnot. I know there's been a whole bunch of projects on that front. Hey there, DJ. Welcome to the Hubcast. Don't you have a tournament to be preparing for or something? And also, while I'm talking about that, everyone who is watching, DJ Blue is going to be casting a PBL tournament later today. That is at, I believe, 1 p.m. Eastern? Not 1 p.m. Eastern, I'm sorry. It is 2 p.m. Eastern. It's 1 p.m. my time. That's why I got confused.
Oh, okay.
That's going to be over at twitch.tv/ProBattleLeague. DJ, if you can just drop a link in chat so we can have people head out there. But
make sure that we're saying it correctly.
Yeah, make sure that I'm not wrong. But I believe it is the Pro Battle League Twitch. But yeah, if you want to go watch that again, starts over at 2 Eastern. Please head out there, check that out, and support DJ. It's going to be a huge tournament. Yeah, and it's going to be a whole ton of fun. So yeah, since we were already talking about production, that was kind of on the radar, anyways. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no,
it's just having a show.
I know last week too. I also commentated the first game in Light that I've commentated probably in 2-3 years. It's definitely been. It was probably before. Mm-hmm. It was before I even became commish, I think, that I was seriously doing streaming. So it would be closer to 3 years. And DJ and I, that was a whole ton of fun. There were some crazy games going on that night. That was just utterly ridiculous and utter mayhem. But that's the great thing about Grifball, and it's a lot of fun to be able to get back in there and do commentary. And I'm excited to see what we're able to do with that, especially with some ideas. Yep, Rain, I was actually going to talk about that later today. We got the Xbox Live message about that. So for those of you who do not see the chat, that was Infinite Rain, who was posting about a Russian mixer that is tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. They're doing that to test some of the other game type options that have been discussed over in the AGLA. So the primary one there is no sprint, and they might be testing slide too. I don't know how they have that set up, but yeah, feel free to check that out if you want to weigh in on that and test out some new game types for the AGLA or the competitive circuit whenever that happens, potentially.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with all those game types and make sure everyone's at least more happier than they were before.
It's definitely not the first time
different
it's come
game types.
But opinions do change, and the more time you kind of have to play with a game type, the more you get to see its strengths and weaknesses. Mm-hmm. Personally, I was a very big believer in no sprint at first, and I think I still kind of prefer it in terms of play. But I'll see you, DJ. Good luck with your tournament tonight. You know, I preferred playing on no sprint because obviously I am an old Halo 3 kid who likes dancing, but my opinion on it kind of changed just because of how kind of smooth sprinting and sliding and all the movement abilities that you get in from Halo 5 are, and they're sort of really integral. Like if you play like HCS and whatnot, all those sort of moves are really integral to being able to move around the map and just you're having all this mobility and whatnot. And especially if we want to move towards a position of having like a competitive circuit or this really high-level esports type league, then we really need to then that's one of those things where we have to be prepared for people from that sort of demographic to come over and try to join in. And that's a really big change to suddenly lose all this mobility that you're used to having that's critical for navigation in HCS type games. So that's kind of the one reason that I see to keep it. It's such a huge loss when you're losing some of these huge mobility things. But so it's basically like it's a trade-off. Is the increase in gameplay, if it is a better playing game type, is that better? Is that worth what you lose in kind of turning off new players and making the adaptation harder? Mm-hmm. That's kind of what it comes down to. Like, I would if two things were equal, usually I would just err on the side of keeping whatever the status quo is, because that's what new players are coming in to expect. So I think that's kind of the concern I've had with it lately, and it's going to depend a lot on how testing happens and everything else to see how that goes through. But it's the sort of thing where, like, maybe for the AGLA, no sprint makes sense, but if it's something like a high-level competitive circuit like we've been talking about in the forums lately, where you might potentially have more of that HCS crowd coming in, then maybe that's a different story. You have to literally look at the demographics, I think, to figure that out. But yeah, that's the only thing that's the only thing I've ever thought about it.
I know I'd miss just being able to glide across the court with my sword.
Yeah,
the slide boost thing. And,
I would miss that too. The sort of barrel roll, being able to slide, pick up the ball, and thruster.
Being really mobile with the ball or the sword in general to get across the court real quick I might miss that.
Yeah.
But then again, it's also part of the competitive edge. So not being able to do that, you'd have to be more passive about where you put yourself on the court in the first place. So it's just a trade-off about which style people like better.
It does slow the game down a little bit, I think, but it depends on. Halo 5 is a very fast-paced game, and with sprinting and passing still in, even if you were to kill slide, like now with the no sprint, that's my problem. I think is you're slowing down the game too much. If you nerf slide, though, like people have tried doing that, like you don't need to make it completely useless, possibly, just lower it enough where slide tanking isn't like the only method of tanking, and you can kind of find a better balance. I think that's probably where the middle ground's going to be, is finding like kind of the sweet spot in slide settings, and that way you can still kind of get that mobility, and you still have sprint and everything's still in the game, and you're able to. You still kind of have this fast-paced gameplay that we've gotten used to with 4 and 5. And I do believe that fast-paced gameplay does play better for viewers. I think I absolutely love Halo 3. It is still my favorite game of Grifball. That's probably never going to change. It might just be because that's the first game I played and there's a sort of nostalgia aspect to it, but it was just beautiful, especially with the launches and whatnot that you had. But the sort of tanking battles are just kind of very slow and methodical. It isn't always the most interesting thing to watch. The thing that made 3 special from a viewership aspect was all of the crazy stuff you could do with the hammer physics, hammer jumping and flowers, launches, all that sort of thing. And I think that's the biggest change that I would like to see at this point. I liked 5's gameplay. If 6 were to take the same formula and improve on it, I would want the hammer physics to be better. I would want them to be closer to Halo 3. Maybe not quite as bouncy, but that was very much a host-dependent issue at the time.
Be able to give shields to the runner and not the tanks,
right?
That sort of thing.
But like, I know you can technically launch in this game, but the distance is just so far down, or it's sort of this weird thing,
And the physics with the health used to be that way too. You could launch better because you'd pop the shields before damaging the health, and that's what helped the launch get there, because you could just recharge shields in the way.
There's no shields in general now.
So it's a lot harder to launch for that reason, because you're already taking down half their health, and that's just that's part of the launch being not really a viable option anyway, because you're already hurting your runner, which is never a good thing.
Yeah, I think if it hadn't been where the runner shields was worked in as a multiple of the player shields rather than something separate, if we could have it set up where the runners could have shields and the players didn't, you might see more launching, because you don't have that situation where the runner just basically becomes next to useless after being popped up.
Yep.
But as it is, it's all health now.
That's what passing's for. Yeah, there's always counters to it, but
yeah, that's to talk about AGLA, though. We kind of mentioned it last week. I'm sorry, not last week. We're talking about last week in the AGLA, but I talked a little bit about it earlier, about the games that I commentated on Wednesday. But There were some ridiculous games last week in the AGLA, and I think the big surprise for me was One Hit Wonders. How they were able to come together, like basically. I mean, you guys just kind of brought in 2 Emmy subs and then beat Vital Signs in a very close 5-4, and stuck in there pretty well against Notorious, who was also without Boss Tycoon. Like there was just a lot of changes that happened on rosters last week, and it was interesting to see how that all shook out.
And Tonga and Rain on their podcast went into a lot of detail about that. But
yeah, they did.
They did comment about how they were a bit surprised how Rage was just shafted in a lot of what happened in the league between trades and people going RIP and people just quitting or getting banned. And he had managed to trade and Emmy call up his way to a decent team so far. So we're not sure where it's going to go from here, but it looks like he's doing his best. So
yeah. I was very surprised at everything that happened to One Hit Wonders, because I'm trying to think of all the seasons that I've been around since we implemented the bid league between when I was commissioned the last couple seasons when I've played, and I can't think of a pro team that's fallen apart quite as much. There's been Emmy teams, sure, but that always happens when you have a lot more new players in the game and whatnot. But on the pro side, I can't think of anything even close to this where... I mean, we've had stuff like the puppy situation happen before, Bacon, but like our people get banned for alt tags or other drama and whatnot, and a team loses a huge player, and that's an unfortunate thing for the captain. But there was this sort of like event after event that hit Rage here. Like you got puppies who got banned, Skull Blazing immediately just immediately kind of retired, and then all the trades and whatnot. Shad's availability wasn't great to work out for Rage, and he didn't want to basically have to carry the team, so that deal had to get made, and that just kind of left basically you, Rage, and who else is still on your roster that's still around?
It's me, Rage, who are actually on the roster, and the Emmy call-ups are Broly, the Legend, and Eternally, who is Vile, and Hydro Kids, who I think still has to play on a different tag because of some other nonsense with Xbox.
Is Richard Mom's Hot now, correct? I think that's his tag now. He changed it to something.
Yeah, but he's playing on like the account for Zach, which also got like, I don't know, there's some complicated setup he's got, but he's still able to play. I think he bought a whole new console just to make sure he could still play Grifball. But those are some Emmy call-ups. But for the stream, especially for the stream, last week it's Eternally Vile, but he just goes by Eternally on his tag, and Broly the Legend.
Yep.
So that's the setup we used then. And so far it looks pretty okay for just putting together a few people, and we do pretty well.
Yeah, no, that definitely worked out pretty well for you guys. I mean, again, I don't think anybody expected a 5-4 win against Vital Signs right after that roster happened, but nobody knew who the call-ups would be at that time.
It was going to be like 5-0, but we were 4-0, and then they started trying.
Yeah,
got back up to 4.
Yeah, there was a sudden, there was definitely a sudden shift in momentum that happened there right after that 4-goal mark, and
we were in trouble.
The comeback, but
so we almost lost that game, but I managed to jump over their heads and get that final score. So
yeah,
it was a pretty amazing game to watch. Everyone was telling me I couldn't stop watching. It was so amazing seeing.
Yeah, no, DJ and I had a whole ton of fun watching that, and I remember, I just remember you going back and forth with somebody on that team. I think it might have been Gattori. I don't remember, but it was you and them who were constantly stopping each other.
Josiah.
Yeah, it was Josiah. That's right.
Josiah.
It was just one would stab grab, and then a couple seconds would go by. The other would stab grab, and just constant back and forth.
Yeah.
I think you both had like about the same number of Grif kills at the end. It was well over double digits.
I had a couple more, but it was getting close there.
It was like 14 to 12, I think, or something like that.
Yeah,
somewhere around that mark. It was
kept
ridiculous.
Getting past each other's enemy tanks and coming in for the swoop.
You just didn't care about what else was going on in the court. It's like, all right, where's ball? My ball now.
Yeah, my ball. Yeah, my ball. That's exactly what it was. I'll take that.
But we're not going to go too in depth as to everything going on in the AGLA, because as we mentioned, Rain and Tonga have done an AGLA podcast that is on the front page if you want to give that a listen, and they go into this into much greater depth than we will be able to in the time that we have, and there's other stuff that we want to cover as well.
Their best rated people, their best rated teams, and they discuss each top team, so give that a listen.
There's been a lot of AGLA players who've actually really stepped it up and started pushing out content, I know. I had that whole wall of text in the forums that was basically pushing people to do that, and I'm glad to see that there's some people out there who are really taking it to heart and getting stuff out there. Pop-Tart obviously has been doing stuff all season, so a huge shout out to him between stats and power rankings. Tonga and Rain have been doing a sort of joint power rankings thing that releases in segments that they started doing last week, and those have been very well thought out. There was the podcast, obviously, and Das Jägers, who's one of our interns, he's been doing Emmy Awards as well. So there's been a whole bunch of community content that's kind of been coming in.
And we're working on more things to put in the mix. Yeah. That way we get more opinions about what's going on, more news really about more detailed things, because before it was just kind of like, yeah, this is kind of happening. So, be sure to check in every week for our games, but now we actually have people working on what's actually going on per team or per player that tends to stand out during the season. So we're pretty excited about that. I think a lot of people don't really realize
that most of us up here in leadership, while we play and whatnot, we aren't as into it as some people who are out there.
Yeah,
I'd say you and I are probably you, me, and DJ probably are the three most active in terms of players of everyone out there, and that's also because we're commentators. We have to know who's playing and whatnot. We have to.
If I forget to check the forum posts, I just miss out on so much. So
yeah. I'm not really talking about forum stuff. I'm just talking about more like actually being on the court, seeing people play, and seeing them develop as players, kind of knowing where they stand and whatnot. It's a sort of situation where like we just don't know all that stuff. We don't have the knowledge necessary to push up power rankings as well as some of these top tier pro players. Like I remember when I did power rankings back in the Halo 3, back for the 2 Halo 3 seasons that we did in the AGLA. Some people got really salty about it, just because like at that point I had been gone for a year. And so much of this was just based on like knowledge of people who were playing back when I first started in the league back in the old Halo 3 days. So that tended to kind of get this bias of, oh, these people are Halo 4 kids, they're not going to be good. And then you have people like D-Cleek who come in and just get clutches all hell. And it's like, what? Yeah. How are you doing this? You're new.
And then Halo 5 came in and everything else changed again. So
yeah, it's not being good.
we need that frontline experience to put up those news.
It's a different viewpoint basically that we can't replicate, because we're not the ones who are like most of us. That's kind of the old joke is those who can't play administrate.
Yeah,
most of us are not top tier players. We don't get to see the same things through the same view that those players do. So having that viewpoint is very helpful, and everyone kind of has a different take on things. So that's why kind of really pushing the community content is something that's important to us. It really gives us a wide spectrum of content and opinions to put out there on the front page.
Because I have my own opinions based on just what customs I've done through, invites and things. And I think I have a lot more exposure than some people, but still, I'm not one to, give my opinion a lot, so I don't get asked, and I just kind of sit here and play my game and I have fun. So that's where it works for me. But
yeah,
I tend to agree with a lot of the rankings just because I'm in there and I know what's going on. So
you tend to agree that One Hit Wonders is ranked last.
They have a good reason, because the team's been gutted so much, but we're hoping to change that opinion, of course. But it's just, I understand where they're coming from, because I've been there. I know what's going on, and we won a game against Vital Signs. So I thought I'd be ranked a little higher, but then again,
that was before both of those rankings from Rain and Tonga were done at the same time. That was before that game happened.
And I believe after that game happened, they did their podcast and remarked how we came back a little bit.
Yeah,
but
yeah, so that'll be interesting to see how that changes next week. But yeah, I know Tonga's rankings, even though that was posted on Friday, that was actually written the same time as Rain's, which was posted early in the week before that game happened. So that's okay. That would be why there was no change there.
Probably. That's what I'm saying. So I've been there. I know more about what's going on currently than sometimes what's common knowledge. So it's good to be in the mix and be able to commentate at the same time and see kind of both sides of that situation and know what's going on in the league and see how they're playing and go, yeah, that's why he's gotten so much better, because he's played a lot of customs this past week. So, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's great to see that the AGLA grow and get better, and we got good plans because of that, because we have people in there going, this is what's going on, and we need to do something about it. So that's where we're headed right now.
Yeah. I just sort of move on and tie it into people who are doing stuff, I also want to give a shout out to Pimp, Tonga, and Perfect Demise, who have really helped bounce out a lot of ideas for the competitive circuit that I've kind of mentioned in the forums this past week. They've been a huge help for that. It's changed the original idea quite a bit, and obviously there's still a lot of stuff that has to be nailed down, but it's definitely going to be a lot better for it, I think. And I know a lot of people are hyped about it, even though we haven't really talked about it a whole lot yet. So it's kind of great to see people kind of latch onto that. It's something that DJ and I in particular have wanted to do for a while now. And it's not the first time that I've had the D. I remember mentioning something about it back in the day when I was commish. It's just, at the time running a league, there was just no time to actually go up and set up this new league, especially not while we were still trying to nail down the bid system and find the perfect balance for that. Yeah, something is better than doing nothing. Yep, exactly. NoPlex.
Yep.
It's, yeah. I mean, you can sit in the forums and talk about why things need to change, but if you can go out and help make that change happen, the entire site's going to be better for it.
Yeah,
and that goes. I mean, that's for everybody. But yeah, so in our agenda, I was going to talk about the long-term future of the AGLA, and then talk a little bit about what we're calling the Pro Tour, which is that sort of high-level competitive circuit. But I think it actually makes more sense to flip that around, because some of the stuff we can talk about with the long-term future of the AGLA kind of depends on that. Yeah. And that's, again, like, that's something that commissioner bust. No, I'm not doing that again. Please no. I don't need to hate Grifball for 2 years again. Although it will mean that there'll be another amazing wall of text if history is any indication. So yeah, for those who are watching who aren't aware of what any of this Pro Tour high-level competitive circuit talk is about, basically on Friday, I believe it was Friday, I made this huge post. It was I counted the number of words. It was 4,000 plus words wall of text. This is easily the longest wall that I have ever posted in the forums, and I would like to say that I'm not a guy who usually posts walls, but that's a complete and utter lie. I've posted a lot of walls in my day. This was not as much of a wall as it was the Great Wall of China of forum posts. Basically, it was huge. I was surprised that it didn't take up an entire page on its own. But yeah, it was. Yeah, there was a whole bunch of stuff kind of going in there. It was basically, a lot of it was just kind of me venting a lot of frustration that was still left over from when I was commish, and just kind of pushing that out there. But it was just kind of the main point of it was trying to get the community and leadership to sort of come together and realize that we're all working on the same team here. We're all working on Team Grifball, and we want to make it better. Yeah. And trying to channel all this desire for improvement into like a positive manner that gets us help and whatnot. I didn't think I was going to get flamed for it, actually, NoPlex. I figured that there might have been some people who were mad about it, but also, like, most of those people wouldn't have read all of it because of how big that was. That's kind of why I post walls as often.
TLDR.
The people who would tear you to pieces over it can't be bothered to read it all, and the people who would actually read and comprehend it are the ones who do read it. So it's kind of a nice thing, but also I'm not a commish anymore, so that there's not quite as big of a target on my back. But no, I agree with you there. But yeah, so there's a whole bunch of topics covered in there. The main point was just kind of getting the community to come together in a positive manner, encourage the community to come in and contribute instead of just kind of sitting there and complaining that there's not enough happening. And I mean, there's definitely a lot of stuff that we want to improve on the hub side of things. I know, like, as far as site criticisms go, I am up there in terms of people who are not a fan. I don't mind the look of the layout currently on the homepage and whatnot, but I think that there needs to be consistency between the forums and the rest of the site. There absolutely needs to be consistency there, because you see the site and it's great and beautiful, and then you click on the forums and it's .info all over again. So that's kind of where we sat on that, and I don't know. I think Kal might have still been working on that before all the baby stuff happened, but at some point that's something that I would like to see happen, even if we need to bring a web designer in to kind of make that work, because I know I'm not familiar with how PHPBB forums work and handle all that. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff on the site side that can be fixed and improved. All the AGLA forums that we saw this season, there's a whole lot of stuff on the back end that's been having problems, and again, Kal hasn't had the time to fix it because baby. There's stats is something that I wanted to see happen for a long time. I really want us to be able to implement something using the Halo 5 API, so that we don't have to have people like Pop-Tart constantly manually collecting stats. So the API is something that I've been trying to learn just to look into that, but I mean, even if it's something where, like, if we get a sponsorship, if we can hire somebody to go and develop this data, like a stats database for us, that's something that's worth looking into, I think. Especially, again, if we want to run a high-level competitive circuit. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff that can be improved that I want to see happen as well, and I posted about that in that wall of text. So if you really want to look into that, go ahead and read that. It is a good read, if I say so myself, even though I'm biased. I had I enjoyed writing it.
Work.
But yeah, I'm not going to recap all of it because, again, it's 4,000 words. We would be here for like another 2 hours if I were to go through
discussing it all,
talking about it. But the main takeaways from it were that sort of leadership community sort of kind of come together and work together to make Grifball great again. I had to throw that quote in there at some point. And the other thing that people kind of latched onto, can't remember if I think I mentioned it slightly in my original post. I just didn't get into detail. And then when people kind of latched onto it and talked about that sort of stuff, they my post was amazing because I said NoFlex's name twice. Yes, that was absolutely the reason. But a lot of people kind of when people were replying to different stuff. I think it was Piggy's that I was replying to, where I kind of got into it a little bit more. She was talking about basically how it seemed to be unfair that we were expecting high-level professionalism from players, and when our leadership wasn't exhibiting that, and we weren't paying them like HCS players. And I know the reason she said that was because Kal and Goose have made the comparison to HCS players before, but for me personally, I don't think that it's even a comparison to that. I don't think that we're asking the same level of professionalism that HCS players are asked of.
Not yet, anyway.
Not yet. If the high level
that might be the ultimate
comes into fruition,
goal,
and there's
but
prize money and sponsors involved, then things will have to get cracked down in that league more so. But that's a future problem. For now, like talking about how the AGLA is like with scheduling and whatnot, there is more flexibility than you would see with most esports. I mean, you are not going to find emergency reschedules in any professional game ever. I mean, all those are just basically tournaments. You show up for that tournament. If you can't make the tournament, too bad. That's why
you lose.
That's why in Dota you see teams bring in stand-ins and whatnot if they have players who can't make it. Like I remember when was it? I think it was in the international for Dota 2 last year, where Navi, who is one of the top teams in Dota, they've kind of had a big roller coaster ride lately in terms of skill, because they've had a lot of players. It's been a big revolving door for them kind of the last couple of years, and they've just finally gotten it nailed down after they disbanded the team for a short time. But last year during the international, one of their newer players, SonicNachos, who's a fantastic sort of support player in the Dota 2 world, he could not get a visa to come in to America for the international, and there's sort of a huge panic about it on that team's side to get him in ready for that tournament, because if he wasn't there, I mean, the tournament still was going to go on. I mean, it's a tournament that takes place at the Seahawks field over in Seattle. It gets sold out. Like, they can't reschedule that.
Yeah, they're not done.
Yeah, so there was a whole thing. Valve had to get involved to kind of get this piece to get approved, and I think he ended up making it there with a couple of days to spare. So that all worked out for him, but it's the sort of thing where, like, even if it wasn't necessarily their fault, they still would have been screwed if he hadn't been able to get there, because nobody was going to reschedule that tournament for them.
Yeah.
And it's like to compare an event of that scale to Grifball right now, but
we'll just reschedule it to a private event, and we'll film it and put it up later for you guys to watch.
Yeah, I mean, the reschedules don't happen.
Yeah, that doesn't happen that way.
That was the most prominent example that I could think of that was recent, because Dota 2 is kind of the only esports scene that I really seriously follow and get into, even more so than Halo. But yeah, I mean, stuff like that. Like you aren't going to see reschedules on the professional level circuit. So even the fact that we have those makes us a little bit more flexible. And I think that there's more that can go to, and that's why I wanted to talk a little bit about the long-term future of the AGLA, how that would fit into a competitive circuit. Because I think a lot of the problems that some players that are having with that actually will get fixed by having this separate league. Because a whole bunch of changes that have been made in the AGLA have been made in the name of promoting a sort of professional level competition and esports style setup. And I was there for a lot of the kind of push to change that, because that was my goal when I was commissioned at the time, was to make the AGLA into a league that could become a sort of esport level or esport like league.
Yeah.
So there's sort of this big push to get people to show up on time so that our broadcasts aren't getting delayed. And that's partly why like this sort of set in stone exists, because when you have free scheduling and you're going to broadcast a game, then you've got people just kind of sitting there in a lobby for like half an hour, and then the other team just doesn't show up because it's free scheduling and they can freely reschedule when they want. That's just not interesting for anybody involved. It's not fun for anyone. viewers just end up sitting there watching a lobby or watching an offline screen for half an hour. The team that's there has to wait half an hour and end up not having a game and whatnot. Yeah, and even, to be fair, personally, I like set in stone scheduling, even without the esport aspect of it, just because I don't have a lot of time. I like being able to show up and know that a game is going to happen. But, yeah,
but it's not, I can move on instead of just sitting there twiddling my thumbs going,
right. But
they're going to show up.
If we can make it easier for captains, basically, like, because there's some teams that have problems making games, and things do come up. Like, I remember, when was it? It was the first or second season when we did Halo 3. Either the fall 15 or spring 16. Was it spring 16? I don't know. It was one of the two AGLA seasons where we did Halo 5.
Yeah.
And I specifically remember Vital Science, who was captained by Rain in the Halo 3 League. I'm pretty sure this was the first season of Halo 3. I think he played 4 the second, but I can't remember.
Okay.
But yeah, his team was on stream, and a whole bunch of emergency stuff came up. I remember right. I think Rain had a family emergency. He had to head out to the hospital for that. There was a player on his team who was already not around. Like, they only had 3 on there, and all their players who weren't there had very legitimate reasons. They would have had their starting lineup had Rain not had that emergency pop up, and it's sort of like that was the one reason that emergency schedules existed. But there were, in the rules, it said that you couldn't emergency reschedule a game that was slated to be broadcast.
Stream game. Yeah.
Because they didn't want to screw the broadcast. So Vital Signs ended up having to play 3v4 on stream. I mean, that probably wasn't any better than not having a game to stream at all, to be honest. So it's sort of things like finding a blend there, and that's what having this sort of, like, kind of taking all this esport-esque mentality and pushing it into a new concept and a new entity is going to benefit the AGLA by helping all those people who play in the AGLA for whatever reason. Because the bid league, although that was originally designed to be an esports type league, it has not. It has been much wider than that, especially with how big AMI has been there. You get a lot of people who go in there to play just so they can team up and play with new players, play with new teams, kind of get out there and have a different experience. And it's a lot of fun from the player's point of view to kind of see where people think you stack up in terms of like credits and whatnot. Bidding has always been a very fun thing to watch for a lot of people. So there's a whole bunch of benefits that the AGLA has brought that aren't necessarily tied into that sort of competitive esports mindset. And by kind of pushing all this stuff that we were trying to push into that league into something different, the people who are in the AGLA currently that don't care for any of that and who actually have it hurt their experience, we can kind of cater to them a little bit more. The AGLA can focus more on serving its community rather than serving the needs of a professional esports league. We don't need to. It gives our admins a bit more flexibility. They don't have to juggle these two priorities that are sometimes butt heads. So I think that's something that's going to end up being good for them. The suggestions that I thought off the top of my head is just with a competitive circuit that's running concurrently, you can drop the number of games per week down to like 2. Because I remember I was a big part of the push actually to have more games per season, but honestly, sometimes the time commitment for that is just ridiculous. You see a lot of players who don't go in and play just because they don't have the time to play 3 games a week, and some teams, especially with those shorter roster caps, they can't afford to pick up players who can only make 1 game a week. They need people with availability.
Yeah.
So dropping it out to 2 kind of makes that a whole lot easier. And with all the events that you have for a competitive circuit, because I'll go in and talk about this in a second, that kind of you still have Grifball being played. The people who want to play more Grifball can play more Grifball. And especially with the AGLA, a lot of those people are the top tier competitive players who honestly would probably be in both, even if the competitive circuit has this very exclusive league where only so many players get in. So it's something that I think that can only be a benefit to the AGLA. So by helping out with scheduling there, we can afford teams to have more emergency reschedules because we don't need to worry about this. Teams don't need to worry about showing up for broadcast because our broadcast priorities can be on the high-level circuit rather than the AGLA. So we don't there doesn't need to be quite as rigid.
We can hold people to a higher standard if they're veteran Grifballers. We know them. We can definitely cater to them. At the same time, we can take in new players and help them out and get better at Grifball, and we can just make sure everyone has a good time instead of trying to cater to both at the same time in one league and it just pulls in 2 directions and gets all screwed up anyway. So
again, it just goes back to flexibility. Are the admins and leadership are going to have more options? They don't have to do. There isn't conflicting priorities anymore. They can focus on what's best for the hub and for the hub community as a whole and the AGLA, rather than having to deal with this long-term vision that's might not necessarily affect all of our current player base. And I think part of it too is creating a new entity. Like the AGLA has so much history to it, and that's partly originally why we wanted that league to be the high-tier competitive league, was because that was its history. It was in Halo 3, the level of competition was just ridiculous. So that was kind of the original push for it. But everything there is, there's a lot of people who have very close ties to the name, and when you try to make huge changes to it, you always get pushback because like there's just so much history and everything else involved with it. Like you are fighting a culture that already exists, and people who do this, they have very good reasons for doing so. I mean, it's a league that has been a huge part of their lives and that they've met a lot of friends with and have a lot of experiences in. And when that starts to change, you obviously you want to save what used to be. You kind of want to help save that culture. So by pushing this into a new thing, especially because of all the culture that needs to change for it to be a professional esports league, having it be a new entity, I think, is a lot easier, because the entity can start and we can basically say, this is how it is. It's the Arena Grifball League of America. That wouldn't be terrible. I know we've had discussions of changing the AGLA name in the past, and they never go anywhere, because at the end of the day, it's the Rooster Teeth throwback is cool. And again, if it's not going to be a professional tier league, we don't need to worry about the name being received poorly by sponsors anymore, because that's not the league that they're going to be concerned about for the most part. So yeah, but I think just all this new flexibility, and by pushing into a new entity, basically, we can sort of just say, this is how this is going to be run, and just kind of create it with that expectation already ingrained, rather than trying to change something where the expectation is vastly different. And I think that's a lot easier to pull off. And players, if they want to join into this new league and they don't like how it's run, they don't need to do it. They don't need to. And if we try to change it in the AGLA and they're already playing in the AGLA, their options are either quit playing a league that they've been involved with for years, or deal with changes they don't like. This way, if they don't want to deal with all this new expectations that come with being a higher level league, they don't need to do so. There's more choice and flexibility involved, and I think that's only a good thing for our players.
Yep. And then with a new league, I'm pretty sure some of our players will be excited about coming up with team names and things like that. So that might be in the works as well. So I know people have we need new team names. These are getting old, but they're recognizable. We need to keep them that way because people come back to see Vital Signs. People come back to see Notorious play. So having a new competitive league with people who are really good at the sport, we can make different team names there, and then we can have fun with that one instead of, having people just go, man, this league's dumb. I need to have a new team name, or otherwise it's just not fresh for me. So having this new change might just help all the people who have been in Grifball so long that they're just used to everything. It might be a nice breath of fresh air. So.
Yeah, and the way I see that working with team names and whatnot is to sort of just kind of go over the rough concept right now. And again, I have to put in the disclaimer that there's so many moving parts with this still.
We're still brainstorming it.
Everything could change within, by the time this actually comes to fruition. That's why, I honestly didn't even want to announce it at the time that I did. It just kind of all worked out that way. It ended up being kind of perfect timing for it, and I think it's something that the community really needed to hear about.
Depending on people's input, depending on what the owners want to do with it, depending on how we
main
need
thing
to stream
is sponsors and partnerships. It's how that all works in with that. So that's the reason why I keep saying things can change. Is this is the sort of thing where there's a lot of
depends on what they want
down the road that we have to look into and consider. Like, how is this setup going to handle new sponsors and partners that we get? Are they going to be able to slot in and work with it fine? If at some point we get to the point where existing professional teams want to come in and play, are we set up to let them do that? And if they do come in and do that, how is that going to fit in with our plans for branding and marketing? And then obviously with prize pools and whatnot, there's a whole legal aspect to it that has to be considered to prevent problems down the line. We had to basically look at it from the point of view of a business that's or a startup that's going in and playing it. We had to be aware of all the risks and challenges that are involved with it, and we had to make sure that our setup is best suited to handle that. The big thing is if you have a monetary prize pool, if a team comes in and they cheat in a tournament and they win a prize from it, how do we handle that? Do we just take the prize from them? If we do that, are they going to? Is that the sort of thing that they might try to sue the hub for? How
are
do
they
we deal with that?
Disqualified, and the next second place people get it? It's a lot of negotiations. It's going to be a lot of changes, and we have to feel like what works for us, and it's just going to have to be a lot of give and take before we finally settle on something that
basically it needs to be nailed down before I would really be confident coming out and saying this is how it's going to be, and being able to kind of go out to me and say like this is what the concept is right now. If you have any further suggestions, feel free to tell them to me, but this is what we're planning to run with at this time.
Nothing's set in stone.
I mentioned the time frame in the forums, but my goal is to be able to talk about this in more depth in the future, in like a couple months' time or whatnot, and be able to really come in and say like this is exactly how the setup's going to work and whatnot, and also probably like towards the end of this year or in early 2017, we can have like a season or two of like a test season where there isn't really a whole lot on the stakes, but we can just kind of see how it works together, work out all the kinks with it, and then post RTX, because this circuit would basically work around RTX, with like the RTX kind of being the big tournament, like basically how Dota 2 has the international, RTX is sort of our international.
Right.
Everything in the competitive circuit would work towards RTX, and that would be the big event, the main event of it. So it would be working towards that. So following RTX 2017, then we would be able to kick off the first year of the circuit prior, assuming everything is in place and ready to go at that point. But so far, I don't have any reason to think that isn't going to be the case. There's a whole lot of time between now and then, and obviously acquiring sponsors and partners is a goal of ours anyway for RTX 2017, so we can go in and improve upon what we did last year with the stage. Like the big thing I want to do is I want us to be able to put in like a video TV wall for the games rather than the projector that we used last year. And a huge part of this, for those of you who are not at RTX, the stage setup, there's pictures out on the Hub, Facebook, and Twitter if you want to take a look at it. And I think we have a front page article at the time that had some of those. Basically, we had a 9-foot by 12-foot screen that we were displaying our matches on with a rear projector, and we sort of enclosed off the area in back and had this projector putting the image on the screen. And we got completely and utterly royally screwed by RNGesus for this, because the way the convention center is set up, you have a whole bunch of big fluorescence lights up on the ceiling. And usually they're in groups of 2 with a little bit of spacing between them, and then there's a huge space between each cluster.
Yeah.
We got put in the one spot, I am not exaggerating, in the convention center where the cluster had 8 lights. Like, it
as
was
opposed
4
to
times
4.
the amount of lights shining directly down onto our stage than anywhere else in the convention center. Like, if our booth had been anywhere else, we would have been perfectly fine. But instead, we had all this ambient light that we just had no way to filter out, and it left the screen kind of a lot dimmer than we wanted it to be.
As the kids say, it was lit.
Our chances of that happening again are astronomically low. I don't want to deal with it, and honestly, the video wall is going to make it a lot easier as far as the backstage setup goes. So, that's kind of the goal, is to make that happen. But those things are expensive. I work on IT. We actually sell those, and like a professional tier TV that goes into making this wall from like say a brand like Samsung or whatnot is $3,000. And you need
that's just one square,
4 to 9 of them for a video wall, plus the mount, which is going to be like another $1,000 to $2,000 depending on how big you're going. With those sort of TVs, you at least don't need a processing machine. But the price of that is astronomically high, and even renting it is high. Like, I think I looked into it, and it's like it would be $6,500 to rent a video wall for 4 days. It's absolutely crazy. So it's I'm dropping frames. That's cool. Thanks, OBS. I think that was just a momentary thing. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. I just saw the red flare out of the corner of my eye. I'm like, what are you doing? Don't do this to me. But yeah, so that's kind of the big change I want to make for that. But stuff like that, we need sponsors to go in and do. So that's already a goal that's on the radar. That's something that DJ and I are working towards. I'm actually working on a sort of hub presentation that we can give to sponsors to kind of talk about like what we are, what we do, what sort of opportunities there are for partnering with us, and what sort of reach they can expect from it, and really kind of go from there. So that's part of it too, is that like I wanted to be able to announce this along with a sponsorship deal, like say like this is being sponsored by them and this is the sort of cash prizes we can expect for this circuit. But again, the community kind of needed it, and that's why I posted it when I did. But it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'll share a couple details right now. Again, the disclaimer: none of this is nailed down yet.
Still in the works.
It could change, but the core of the idea is that it's an exclusive league. You have a pro league, and right now there's also a plan for a developmental league. Each would be 8 teams, 4 to 5 man rosters. If your team signs up and you don't make it on one of those leagues, too bad. your team can still register for what we're calling the Pro Tour, but you can't. But you won't be able to play in the actual league. You would only be able to play in open tournaments that are held a couple times each season. And the year would be split into 3 seasons. You would have this high-level league, which would be probably a 12-week regular season, 1 game per week. Make it a low-time commitment and let teams focus more on practicing and preparing for their games rather than having to constantly scramble and get on for games. Or if they don't want to practice, they don't need to. It kind of goes. It's like kind of the old school AGLA and like the classic style GGL setup where you have games like maybe once a night or maybe one night a week, and you can hop on and make it. Some teams, if they want to practice, they'll get on every day to practice, or they'll get on a couple hours early to practice. Some teams just get on with no practice at all and go in and play. It's a much easier time commitment for teams. So you would have that 1 game per week, and then there would also be tournaments run regularly. There would be like a tournament schedule released at the start of each season, and you could sign up for those. Each league game that you win and each tournament, and depending on how well you place in a tournament, you earn points onto a ladder, and those points are used to determine who gets invited to a major tournament held at the end of the year, which is basically the playoff tournament. So it would be a sort of thing where, like, the plan I have now would be for the Pro League with 8 teams, you would have 2 divisions of 4. Those divisions would remain as static as possible, but we could reseed them based on past season ladder scores if we need to, if they get imbalanced. And we would encourage teams to kind of keep their team names static as they can to kind of encourage rivalries happening and whatnot. Because a big reason that didn't happen in the AGLA, that's why static team names existed. We wanted rivalries to develop. But when contracts and all that were taken out, there was just no holdover between teams, so you didn't have rivalries develop because you didn't have players consistently meeting on the court with each other under the same team name.
Yeah.
This would be a little different because you would with a classic style setup where the teams kind of form themselves, that you have complete control over who's on your team. Then teams tend to stay together a little bit longer. You see the same groups of players playing together, and you get to know those. Like, that's why names like 4 Guys 1 Ball, Way to Fail are still remembered now from the Reach era. Or if you go back to Halo 3, Less Than 3, Cheap Ass Gamers, there's a whole bunch of lists like Cannonball.
Yeah.
There's so many teams from Halo 3 that you can remember. And sometimes the team names change from season to season, but the core always happened. The core is always the same. Like, the one team that I'll always remember from the Halo 3 days was the original Less Than 3, which was just the Halo 3 God Squad. It was like Silva, Thumi, Shadow, and who else? Taylor? Maybe not Taylor. I can't remember. It was 4 players who were certainly top tier. It would be like a team today of Rain, Gingy, we'll say Easy, and Ace. That would be like the modern day equivalent, maybe. I don't know if they quite stack up, but yeah, it was like 4 of the best Halo 3 players who ever played. It was just an obnoxious roster. So you get to see stuff like that kind of come together, which is interesting to see and see how it all works out. But yeah, that's kind of the premise for it. There, you have those all working together, and again, like, there's a whole lot of details, like how teams get invited to the major is still something that can be worked on. Like, right now, I have it. The plan would be like the top team from each division by record in the league gets an invite, and then everything else, like all your wild card spots, are basically picked by how you place on the ladder. So that way, the teams that do well in tournaments get rewarded. And actually, if you're not a pro team and you do well in a whole bunch of tournaments, you actually have an outside shot at getting into the major. And I would also like to have like a major qualifying tournament beforehand for teams who aren't in the pro league to try to get in. But yeah, again, this is all stuff that's sort of in flux and can change. But those just are sort of ideas that we've looked into doing.
Yep, it's coming in the works, and we gotta figure out what works first before we actually nail anything down. So this is all just ideas we're spinning right now.
Yeah. So. No, I mean it's something that I'm very hyped to see happen, and I'm happy to see that the community is hyped for. But again, there's a lot of things still in flux about it. But once it does happen, I'm hoping that it's going to be an amazing thing and a huge new addition for us. So looking at the time, we are right about at 11 a.m., so I think we're just about the hour mark. Oogie, is there anything else you wanted to talk about tonight? I say tonight,
no.
This morning.
Yeah, this morning. Nothing particular. Just make sure you do check out Pro Battle League for DJ. Go ahead and over there and go and support him. Yep, again, that's going to be at 2 Eastern, twitch.tv/Pro Battle League. I believe he's over at the Hyper RPG Studios doing that. It's actually being run live, and it's a huge production for him. He is super psyched to be doing that, so check that out. And
Did Grifbot eat your link?
No, I typed it or spelled it wrong.
Nice.
There we go.
There it is. Yeah, so Oogie just posted the link in chat for those of you who are watching. Again, that's going to be at 2 p.m. Eastern, so that's going to be in roughly 2 hours.
2 hours.
So check that out. Support DJ.
Yep.
I know he's been kind of stressing out about it because it's a huge event for him. So go show him your support. And I think that's about it. So you all have a great day. I believe we'll be doing this again same time next week, correct?
I believe so.
I think we're
unless
the Hubcast squad.
Goose and Kal are back, but I don't. There's no news of it yet, so we'll just plan to do this again next week.
Yeah, until we're told otherwise, this is happening again next week. And our broadcast this week, obviously, check us out for Wednesday and Thursday night Grifball. The schedule is down in the panels below the stream. I actually just updated that yesterday to include our latest Warzone weekend show, so that's in there as well. So if you're around for any of those, feel free to check us out and watch those. Watch some Greek Grifball happen on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And on Saturday, obviously, if you want to get in and play some Warzone with us, with myself, DJ, Receptor, and the rest of us, feel free to pop on then. It's open to anybody, as long as we've got spots. So feel free to check us out then.
Yep.
So that's all I've got. I think that's all we have for this Hubcast. Again, this was Hubcast 308. So everyone who's watching, we hope you have a great night, and we will see you again next week.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Grifball Hubcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @GrifballHub for all the latest in Grifball news and entertainment.